They say money screams, but wealth whispers. For 3 years, Sarah O'Connell whispered so quietly that her husband, Derek, thought she was mute. He thought he was the king of his castle, the breadwinner, the man who had saved a poor, pregnant orphan from a life of mediocrity. He was wrong, dead wrong. On a freezing Christmas Eve, surrounded by his sycophantic friends and his gleaming mistress, Derek made the fatal mistake of handing Sarah an eviction notice instead of a gift. He thought he was throwing out the trash. He didn't realize he was evicting the owner of the bank that held his mortgage. Watch what happens when the whisper turns into a roar. The snow was falling thick and fast over Greenwich, Connecticut, dusting the manicured hedges of the O'Connell estate in a layer of pristine white. From the outside, the sprawling Georgian manor looked like a Thomas Kincaid painting brought to life. The windows glowed with the warmth of crystal chandeliers, and a line of luxury cars, Mercedes G-Wagons, Bentleys, and a particularly ostentatious red Ferrari lined the heated driveway. Inside, the air smelled of pine needles, expensive cologne, and the distinct, metallic scent of ambition. Derek O'Connell stood by the fireplace, one hand resting casually on the mantle, the other swirling a glass of Macallan 25. He was handsome in a predatory way, with a jawline that could cut glass and eyes that constantly scanned the room for someone more important to talk to. He was 34, a rising star at Sterling and Finch, a boutique investment firm, and tonight was his victory lap. "Derek, you've outdone yourself," said Bradley Cooper, not the actor but the senior VP of mergers, clapping a heavy hand on Derek's shoulder. "This house is magnificent. The market has been brutal this quarter, yet here you are, living like a Kennedy." Derek laughed, a practiced, hollow sound. "You know how it is, Brad. You eat what you kill, and I've been hungry." "And your wife?" Brad looked around, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Where is the lovely Sarah? I haven't seen her since the summer barbecue." Derek's smile didn't falter, but his eyes hardened. "Oh, you know Sarah. She's slowing down. The pregnancy has been hard on her. She's probably in the kitchen, making sure the catering staff doesn't ruin the canapes. She's become quite domestic." A ripple of polite, condescending laughter went through the small circle of men. In reality, Sarah was not supervising the catering staff. She was the catering staff. In the kitchen, Sarah O'Connell wiped a bead of sweat from her forehead with the back of her wrist. She was 8 months pregnant, her ankles swollen to the size of grapefruits, and her back aching with a dull, throbbing rhythm. She wore a simple, slightly faded maternity dress that she had bought at a thrift store 3 months ago. Derek had cut off her credit cards in October, claiming that they needed to tighten the belt to pay for the holiday party. "Mrs. O'Connell, please sit down," whispered Maria, the head housekeeper. Maria was the only person in the house who looked at Sarah with anything other than disdain. "I can finish the plating. Mr. Derek won't know." "It's okay, Maria," Sarah said, her voice soft but steady. "He wants me to bring out the tray. He said it's important I look useful tonight." Sarah picked up the heavy silver platter loaded with truffle-infused deviled eggs. She took a deep breath, steeling herself. She wasn't an orphan, and she certainly wasn't poor, but she had played the role Derek assigned her for 3 years. When they met, she had just wanted to be loved for herself, not her lineage. So she had introduced herself as Sarah Smith, a freelance librarian. Derek had swept her off her feet, or so she thought. Now, looking back, she saw the cracks in the foundation. He liked her because she was quiet. He liked her because she was fixable. He liked her because she made him feel superior. She pushed through the swinging doors and entered the grand salon. The noise level dropped perceptibly. Sarah felt the eyes land on her. She knew what they saw, a tired, pregnant woman in a cheap dress, shuffling through a room full of women wearing Vera Wang and Chanel. "Ah, there she is," Derek announced, his voice booming with false cheer. "Everyone, my wife Sarah. Honey, bring those over here. Mr. Henderson was just saying he was famished." Sarah walked toward them. She could feel the baby kick, a sharp jab against her ribs. As she reached the group, she saw her. Jessica. Jessica was 22, an intern at Derek's firm, and she was currently draped over the arm of the velvet sofa like a Persian cat. She wore a slinky red dress that cost more than Sarah's entire allowance for the year. Her blonde hair was a cascade of perfect waves, and her lips were painted a dangerous shade of crimson. "Oh, Sarah," Jessica cooed, not bothering to stand up. "You look so comfortable. I wish I could get away with wearing a sack like that. But Derek insists I dress up for company." The room went silent. The insult was so sharp, so blatant, that even the drunken VPs shifted uncomfortably. Derek didn't defend his wife. He chuckled. "Jessica has a sharp tongue, Sarah. Don't take it personally. She's just teasing. Now, put the tray down and get me a refill. The ice is melting." Sarah set the tray down on the coffee table. Her hands were trembling, not from fear, but from a cold, rising rage that she had been suppressing for months. She looked at Derek. "I'm tired, Derek," she said. "I'm going upstairs to rest. My back—" "Rest?" Derek snapped, his mask of conviviality slipping. "We have 50 guests, Sarah. This is the most important night of my career. I need a hostess, not an invalid. Go to the bar and get the fresh ice. Now." Sarah looked at him, really looked at him. She saw the sweat on his upper lip, the desperation in his eyes, the way he looked at Jessica for approval. "No," Sarah said. It was barely a whisper, but in the silence of the room, it sounded like a gunshot. "Excuse me?" Derek stepped closer, towering over her. "I said no. I am your wife, not your waitress. I am carrying your child. If you want ice, get it yourself." Derek's face turned a violent shade of plum. He grabbed her arm, his fingers digging into her soft flesh. "Don't you dare embarrass me in front of these people. You ungrateful little—" "Let go of me," Sarah said, her voice dropping an octave, taking on a tone Derek had never heard before. It was the tone of someone who was used to giving orders, not taking them. Derek released her, shoving her slightly backward. She stumbled but caught herself on the edge of the sofa. "You know what?" Derek sneered, looking around the room, performing for his audience. "I'm done. I'm done with the whining, the laziness, the dragging me down. I tried to save you, Sarah. I tried to give you a life you could never dream of. But you're just dead weight." He reached into the inside pocket of his tuxedo jacket and pulled out a thick, folded envelope. He slapped it onto the silver tray, right next to the deviled eggs. "Merry Christmas, Sarah," Derek said, a cruel smirk twisting his lips. "Open it." Sarah stared at the envelope. She didn't need to open it. She knew exactly what it was. The room was so quiet you could hear the wind howling outside, rattling the double-paned windows. Sarah reached out and picked up the envelope. Her name was printed on the front in stiff, legal courier font. Sarah O'Connell. She tore the seal. Divorce papers. "I filed them this morning," Derek announced, pouring himself another drink, his confidence surging as Jessica stood up and sidled next to him, looping her arm through his. "Irreconcilable differences. And since you signed that prenup, thank God I listened to my lawyer, you walk away with exactly what you came in with." "Nothing," Jessica giggled, resting her head on Derek's shoulder. "Oh, Derek, you're so decisive. I love that about you." And that's not all, Derek continued, fueled by the adrenaline of his own cruelty. I want you out. Now. Jessica is moving in tonight. We're going to have a real Christmas morning. A murmur of shock went through the crowd. Even the hardened Wall Street wolves looked uneasy. Throwing a pregnant woman out into a blizzard on Christmas Eve was a level of villainy that made them uncomfortable. Derek, old boy, Mr. Henderson, the CEO, cleared his throat. Ideally, these things are handled with a bit more discretion. She is pregnant, after all. She'll be fine. Derek waved a dismissive hand. She can go to a shelter or back to whatever trailer park she crawled out of. It's time I stopped letting her leech off my success. This house, this lifestyle, it's for winners. Sarah stood perfectly still. The initial shock had evaporated, replaced by a clarity so sharp it felt like ice water in her veins. She looked at the divorce papers. Then she looked at the prenup clause referenced on page 3. The party of the second part, Sarah, claims no right to any assets acquired by the party of the first part, Derek, prior to the marriage or during the marriage. She almost laughed. Derek had been so obsessed with protecting his meager assets, his 401k, his leased BMW, his devastatingly average bonus checks, that he had never once asked to see her financials. He had assumed that because she wore thrift store clothes and didn't brag, she had nothing. "You want me to leave?" Sarah asked. "Right now?" "Right now," Derek said, pointing to the grand oak double doors. "Take your coat. Leave the jewelry. I bought that." Sarah reached up and unclasped the thin gold chain around her neck, a birthday gift from 2 years ago. She dropped it into the deviled eggs. "Fine," she said. She turned and walked toward the hallway closet. She put on her heavy wool coat, pulled on her boots, and wrapped a scarf around her neck. She didn't pack a bag. She didn't take a toothbrush. She walked to the front door and opened it. The wind roared in, carrying snow into the foyer. "Don't come crawling back when you're freezing," Jessica yelled after her, laughing. "We won't answer the door." Sarah stepped out onto the porch and closed the heavy door behind her, shutting out the warmth, the light, and the noise of the party. She stood alone in the dark, the snow swirling around her. The temperature was 10 degrees below zero. The driveway was long and icy. She walked down the steps, careful not to slip. She walked past Derek's prized Ferrari. She reached the end of the driveway, where the stone pillars marked the entrance to the estate. She stopped. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a burner phone she had kept hidden for 3 years. It was an old Nokia, the kind that held a charge for weeks. She dialed a number from memory. It rang once. "Sinclair Residence, Arthur speaking." A deep, gravelly voice answered. "Arthur," Sarah said. Her voice didn't waver. "It's Sarah." There was a pause on the other end, a pause filled with 3 years of worry and silence. "Miss Sarah?" Arthur's voice cracked slightly. "Is that really you? Your grandmother? We've been trying to find you. The investigators said you vanished." "I'm in Greenwich, Connecticut," Sarah said, looking back at the house. Through the window, she could see Derek toasting with champagne, Jessica kissing his cheek. "I need a pickup. Immediate extraction." "Code red?" Arthur asked, his tone shifting instantly to professional steel. "Code black," Sarah said. "And Arthur, bring the S-70R6. The weather is bad." "The Sikorsky is fueled and ready, Miss Sarah. We are 20 minutes out from Teterboro, but we can cut that to 10 if we push the rotors. Where exactly are you?" "I'm at 4042 Highland Avenue. But, Arthur—" "Yes, miss." "Don't land at the airport. Land on the front lawn. I want them to see." "Understood. ETA 8 minutes. Stay warm, Miss Sarah. We're coming home." Sarah hung up the phone. She wiped a snowflake from her eyelashes. She wasn't Sarah O'Connell anymore. She was Sarah Sinclair, sole heiress to the Sinclair mining and shipping fortune, a dynasty that made Derek's investment firm look like a lemonade stand. She wrapped her coat tighter around her belly and waited. Inside the house, the party was getting rowdy. Derek felt like a god. He had shed the dead weight. He had the trophy girl. He had the respect of his peers. "To Derek," Jessica squealed, raising her glass. "To the future." "To the future," the guests echoed. Suddenly, the crystal glasses on the table began to vibrate. It started as a low hum, a thrumming that was felt in the chest before it was heard. Then, the sound grew. A rhythmic thwack, thwack, thwack that shook the window panes. "What is that?" Mr. Henderson asked, looking around nervously. "Is that thunder?" "In a snowstorm?" Brad frowned. "Sounds like machinery." The noise grew deafening. The chandeliers began to sway dangerously. The liquid in the scotch glasses rippled. Outside, the darkness was suddenly pierced by a blinding spotlight. A beam of pure white light cut through the falling snow, illuminating the front lawn with the brightness of noon. "What on earth?" Derek rushed to the window. He looked out. His jaw dropped. Descending from the dark clouds, defying the blizzard, was a massive, sleek helicopter. It wasn't a police chopper or a news bird. It was a Sikorsky S-706D, painted in matte black with gold trim. The logo on the side was a stylized S, entwined with a globe, the crest of the Sinclair Corporation. The downdraft from the rotors whipped the snow into a frenzy, creating a whiteout vortex. The carefully manicured hedges were flattened. The festive wreath on the front door was ripped off and sent tumbling into the night. "Who the hell is landing a helicopter on my lawn?" Derek screamed, his face pressing against the glass. The helicopter touched down with practiced precision, its landing gear crushing Derek's prize-winning rose bushes. The side door slid open. 2 men jumped out. They weren't police. They were dressed in tactical black suits with earpieces, moving with the fluidity of Secret Service agents. One of them held a large black umbrella. They ran toward the end of the driveway. Derek squinted. Who are they running to? And then he saw her. Sarah was standing by the stone pillar. The men reached her. One instantly shielded her with the umbrella, while the other took off his own heavy coat and wrapped it around her shoulders. They treated her not like a stray dog, but like a head of state. That's Sarah," Jessica whispered, her voice trembling. Derek watched in disbelief as his poor orphan wife was escorted toward the multi-million-dollar aircraft. She paused at the steps of the helicopter. She turned around and looked directly at the house. Even from 50 yards away, through the snow and the glass, Derek felt the weight of her stare. She didn't wave, she didn't cry, she just looked. Then she climbed inside. The door slid shut. The engines roared, the pitch increasing to a scream. The helicopter lifted off, banking sharply toward the Manhattan skyline, leaving Derek O'Connell staring at his ruined lawn and a very empty driveway. "Derek," Mr. Henderson said, his voice quiet and very, very serious. "Do you know whose logo was on that chopper?" Derek shook his head, unable to speak. "That was the Sinclair family crest," Henderson said, looking at Derek with a mixture of pity and terror. "They own half the steel in Pennsylvania and the bank that underwrites this firm." "Derek, who exactly did you just divorce?" The interior of the Sikorsky S-76D was a sanctuary of cream leather and burl wood, a stark contrast to the freezing, hostile world Sarah had just left. As the helicopter banked sharply over the Long Island Sound, the cabin was quiet save for the muffled, rhythmic thrum of the rotors. Arthur, the man who had been the Sinclair family's head of security and most trusted confidant for 40 years, sat opposite Sarah. He had already pulled a cashmere blanket from a hidden compartment and draped it over her knees. He then opened a small medical kit, his movements precise and practiced. "Heart rate is elevated, Miss Sarah," Arthur said, glancing at the monitor he had clipped to her finger. "But stable. Dr. Evans is waiting at the tower. We have the obstetrics team on standby." Sarah stared out the window at the dark water below. The adrenaline that had fueled her exit was fading, replaced by a deep, bone-weary exhaustion. But beneath the fatigue, something else was waking up. A part of her she had sedated for 3 years. The Sarah who ran boardrooms, who negotiated international trade deals, who could silence a room with a raised eyebrow. "I'm fine, Arthur," she said, her voice stronger now. "The baby is strong. She's a Sinclair. It takes more than a blizzard and a cheap tuxedo to hurt us." Arthur allowed himself a small, grim smile. "Mr. O'Connell, he has no idea, does he?" "None," Sarah replied, turning her gaze from the window to Arthur. Her eyes were hard. "He thinks he married a librarian from Ohio. He thinks I have a student loan debt and a estranged aunt in Cleveland. He doesn't know that Sarah Smith died the moment I stepped onto this chopper." "He threw you out," Arthur said, his voice dropping to a growl. "On Christmas Eve, while you are carrying the air." "He did," Sarah confirmed. She reached for the bottle of water Arthur offered. "He said I was dead weight. He said he wanted a winner. He handed me divorce papers and a prenup." Arthur chuckled, a dark sound. "A prenup? Against you?" "He wanted to protect his 401k, Sarah said, a dry laugh escaping her lips. "He wanted to make sure I didn't get half of his leased Ferrari." "The irony is almost poetic," Arthur noted. "Does he know who owns the leasing company?" "He will," Sarah said. "Soon." The helicopter began its descent toward Manhattan. The city lights sprawled out like a grid of diamonds, a kingdom waiting for its queen to return. They weren't heading to a hospital. They were heading to the Sinclair Tower, a 70-story monolith on 57th Street that served as both the corporate headquarters and the family's primary residence in the city. The top 3 floors were a fortress, equipped with a private medical suite that rivaled Mount Sinai. As the skids touched down on the heated helipad, a team was already moving. The doors slid open, and Sarah was helped out, not by rough hands, but by respectful, urgent professionals. "Miss Sinclair, welcome back," a woman in a white coat said, rushing forward. It was Dr. Evans, the family's concierge doctor. "Wheelchair, please. No walking." "I can walk, Beatrice," Sarah said, though she allowed herself to be seated in the chair. "Not tonight, you don't," Dr. Evans commanded softly. "We need to check the fetal stress levels immediately." They moved through the private elevator, bypassing the corporate floors, shooting straight up to the penthouse. The doors opened into a foyer of Italian marble and vaulted ceilings, a space that made Derek's mansion in Greenwich look like a dollhouse. Sarah was whisked into the medical wing. For the next hour, it was a blur of ultrasound wands, blood pressure cuffs, and hushed medical jargon. Finally, Dr. Evans lowered the stethoscope. "You're dehydrated. Your cortisol levels are through the roof, and you're exhausted. But the baby is fine. Her heartbeat is strong." Sarah let out a breath she felt she'd been holding since she walked out Derek's door. "Thank God." "You need bed rest, Sarah," Dr. Evans said sternly. "Strict bed rest for at least 48 hours. No stress, no work." Sarah sat up, swinging her legs over the side of the exam bed. She looked at Arthur, who was standing guard by the door. "Arthur, bring me the black tablet," Sarah said. Dr. Evans sighed. "Sarah, I just said—" "I heard you, Beatrice. I will stay in bed. But I will not be idle." Sarah's eyes flashed. I have been playing house for 3 years. I have been cooking, cleaning, and listening to a mediocre man explain the stock market to me like I'm a child. I have sat there while he lectured me on fiscal responsibility, while I secretly own the bank that holds his mortgage. Arthur stepped forward, holding out a sleek, obsidian black tablet. This wasn't a consumer device. It was a biometric-secured direct link to the Sinclair global mainframe. Sarah placed her thumb on the scanner. The screen flared to life, displaying a complex dashboard of global assets: shipping lanes in the Pacific, lithium mines in Nevada, real estate holdings in London, and the massive investment portfolio managed by Sinclair Capital. 3 years ago, Sarah said, her fingers flying across the screen, I stepped away. I wanted to see if I could be loved for just me. Not the money, not the name. I wanted a simple life. She paused, a flicker of pain crossing her face as she remembered the early days with Derek. He had been charming then, attentive. But money, or the pursuit of it, had rotted him from the inside out. I found out that a simple life with a weak man is dangerous, she whispered. Then her voice hardened. Arthur, initiate protocol Nemesis. Arthur nodded, pulling out his own phone. Target? Derek O'Connell, Sarah said, and anyone who stood by him tonight. Identify every guest at that party. Cross-reference them with our subsidiaries. If they work for us, flag them. If they have loans with us, audit them. And Mr. O'Connell specifically? Sarah looked at the tablet. She pulled up the file on Sterling and Finch, Derek's firm. He thinks he's a shark, Sarah said coolly. He thinks he understands power because he bullied a pregnant woman. Let's show him what a real predator looks like. She tapped a command on the screen. Freeze his assets, she ordered. Not just the joint accounts. Contact the fraud department at First National, which we own, and flag his personal accounts for suspicious activity related to the divorce filing. Lock him out of the house systems. He loves that smart home tech so much. Let's see how he likes it when the house turns against him. Done, Arthur said, typing rapidly. And Arthur. Sarah lay back against the pillows, her hand resting protectively on her stomach. Get me the legal team, the real legal team, not the family lawyers we use for charity galas. Get me Wolfson and Associates. I want them at his door at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Christmas morning, Arthur raised an eyebrow. That's cold, Miss Sarah. Sarah closed her eyes, the image of Jessica smirking in the red dress burning in her mind. He wanted a cold Christmas, she said softly. I'm just giving him what he asked for. Back in Greenwich, the party had died a sudden, agonizing death. The moment the Sinclair helicopter had lifted off, the atmosphere in the O'Connell living room shifted from celebratory to funereal. The guests, previously so eager to drink Derek's scotch and laugh at his jokes, were now scrambling for their coats. I really must be going, Bradley Cooper stammered, checking his phone nervously. My wife, the kids, waiting up. Brad, wait, Derek pleaded, following him to the door. One drink. We haven't even cut the cake. That helicopter. It was probably just a mistake. A medical evac for the wrong address or something. Brad paused, his hand on the doorknob. He looked at Derek with a mix of pity and self-preservation. Derek, Sinclair helicopters don't make mistakes, and they certainly don't pick up poor orphans, unless they aren't poor and they aren't orphans. You need to call a lawyer, a very expensive one. Brad left, closing the door firmly. One by one, the other guests followed. The CEO, Mr. Henderson, didn't even say goodbye. He just walked out, typing furiously on his BlackBerry, already doing damage control for the firm. Within 20 minutes, Derek O'Connell was alone in his silent, decorations-strewn mansion. Alone, except for Jessica. Jessica was sitting on the sofa, scrolling through Instagram, looking bored. She seemed entirely unable or unwilling to grasp the gravity of what had just happened. "Well, that was rude," Jessica huffed, looking at the half-eaten trays of food. "Your friends are buzzkills, Derek. And who was that guy in the chopper?" "Sarah's secret sugar daddy." Derek paced the room, running his hands through his hair. "Shut up, Jessica. Just shut up for a second. I need to think. Don't talk to me like that," she snapped. "I'm the one who stayed. Remember, you chose me." I know, Derek muttered. He walked to the window and looked out at the crushed rose bushes. The snow was covering the landing marks, but the imprint of the event was burned into his retinas. Sinclair? Why was that name so familiar? He walked over to his liquor cabinet to pour another drink, but his hand shook so badly he spilled amber liquid onto the mahogany. "It's fine," he said aloud, trying to convince himself. "Sarah is a nobody. She probably worked as a maid for the Sinclairs years ago or something. Maybe she called in a favor. That's it. It's a charity thing. The rich love charity cases." "Exactly," Jessica said, coming up behind him and wrapping her arms around his waist. "She's just a charity case, and now she's gone. It's just us. Come on, Derek. Let's go upstairs. You promised me the master bedroom." Derek took a deep breath. He looked at Jessica, young, beautiful, and completely vacuous. For the first time, her beauty didn't distract him. It irritated him. But he forced a smile. He had burned his life down for this. He had to make it work. "You're right," he said. "Let's go up." They went upstairs. Derek collapsed into the bed that Sarah had made that morning. He fell into a fitful, alcohol-fueled sleep, dreaming of helicopters chasing him through a maze of spreadsheets. He woke up shivering. It was morning. Christmas morning. The light streaming through the curtains was grey and harsh. "Derek!" Jessica's voice was a shrill whine from the bathroom. "There's no hot water, and the room is freezing." Derek sat up. He could see his breath in the air. The thermostat on the wall was dark. "Power outage?" he groaned, rubbing his temples. His head pounded with a massive hangover. He climbed out of bed, shivering in his boxers, and walked into the hallway. "Alexa, turn on the heat." The smart speaker on the hallway table remained silent. "Alexa!" he barked. Nothing. He grabbed his phone from the nightstand. 7:45 a.m. He had 4 missed calls from his credit card company and 1 email from his bank. He opened the email first. Subject: urgent. Account suspension. Dear Mr. O'Connell, due to flagged suspicious activity regarding recent filings and potential breach of contract, all accounts associated with your social security number have been temporarily frozen pending an audit. Please contact— "What?" Derek whispered. "Breach of contract." He tapped on his banking app. "Access denied." "Jessica!" he yelled. "Check your phone. Is the Wi-Fi working?" Jessica appeared in the doorway, wrapped in a duvet. "No. The Wi-Fi is down. The TV won't turn on. Even the heated floors in the bathroom are off. Derek, fix this. It's Christmas." Derek ran downstairs. He went to the smart home hub in the utility room. The screen was flashing red. System override. Administrator lockout. "I am the administrator!" Derek screamed, smashing his fist against the panel. Just then, the doorbell rang. It wasn't the polite chime of a neighbor delivering cookies. It was a long, insistent press. Derek grabbed a robe and ran to the front door. He looked through the peephole. Standing on his porch were 3 men and a woman. They were dressed in immaculate dark suits, despite it being Christmas morning. They held briefcases. Behind them, a black SUV idled in the driveway. Derek opened the door. "Who are you? The power company?" The woman in the front stepped forward. She was sharp-featured, wearing glasses that looked like they cost more than Derek's car. "Mr. Derek O'Connell?" she asked. "Yes. Who are you?" "I am Linda Wolfson, senior partner at Wolfson and Associates. I represent Mrs. Sarah Sinclair O'Connell." Derek froze. "Sarah? Sinclair?" "Yes," Linda said, stepping into the foyer without being invited. The three men followed her, forming a wall of wool and hostility. "We are here to serve you with an amended divorce petition, an immediate eviction notice, and a cease and desist order regarding the use of company assets." "Eviction?" Derek laughed nervously, tightening his robe. "Lady, you're confused. I own this house. Sarah signed a prenup. She gets nothing." Linda Wolfson smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a shark that had just smelled blood in the water. "Mr. O'Connell, you don't own this house," she said, pulling a document from her briefcase. "You have a mortgage. That mortgage is held by North Atlantic Trust." "So, I pay my mortgage." "North Atlantic Trust is a subsidiary of Sinclair Holdings," Linda explained calmly. "And according to the terms of your loan, specifically Clause 14B regarding character and reputational risk, the bank reserves the right to call in the full value of the loan immediately if the borrower engages in conduct detrimental to the lender's interests." That's insane," Derek sputtered. "That's boilerplate. You can't just call $1 million loan because I got divorced." "We aren't calling it because you got divorced," Linda corrected him. "We are calling it because you attempted to defraud a Sinclair heir. Furthermore, you funded this renovation and your lavish lifestyle on a line of credit secured by your stock options at Sterling and Finch. Yes, my stock options are solid." Actually, Linda flipped to another page. "As of 8 a.m. this morning, Sterling and Finch is under internal investigation for insider trading and gross mismanagement. The stock has been suspended. Your options are currently valued at 0. Derek felt the blood drain from his face. "Investigation? By who?" "By the majority shareholder," Linda said softly. "Sinclair Private Equity acquired a controlling stake in your firm 6 months ago. They just chose not to announce it until this morning." Derek staggered back, hitting the wall. The pieces were falling into place, crushing him. Sarah wasn't just rich. She was the system. She was the bank, the boss, the landlord. She lied to me," Derek whispered. "She told me she was poor." "She told you she wanted a partner," Linda said. "She tested you. You failed." Jessica came running down the stairs, still wrapped in the duvet. "Derek, who are these people? Why is there a tow truck in the driveway?" Derek looked out the open door. A large flatbed truck was backing up toward his Ferrari. "Hey!" Derek yelled, running past the lawyers onto the porch. "Hey, that's my car!" The driver of the tow truck hopped out. He held a clipboard. "Lease termination order, buddy. Payment default. Dealer wants it back." "I didn't default," Derek screamed, the cold air biting at his exposed legs. "I paid it last week." "Payment was reversed this morning," the driver shrugged. "Insufficient funds." Derek watched as the hook was attached to the Ferrari's bumper. The car he loved more than his wife was being dragged away like a piece of scrap metal. He turned back to the lawyers. Linda Wolfson was standing in the doorway, checking her watch. "You have 1 hour to vacate the premises, Mr. O'Connell," she said. "The locks will be changed at 10:01 a.m. Anything left inside will be considered abandoned property." "Where am I supposed to go?" Derek cried, his voice cracking. "It's Christmas. It's freezing." Linda looked at him with zero sympathy. "I believe there is a motel off I-95 that accepts cash," she said. "If you have any." Jessica looked at Derek. She looked at the tow truck. She looked at the formidable lawyers. "Wait," Jessica said, her voice trembling. He's broke? Destitute, Linda confirmed, and likely facing litigation that will keep him in debt for the rest of his life. Jessica dropped the duvet. She was wearing her coat underneath. I'm leaving, she said to Derek. Jess? What? No, we can fight this. Derek reached for her. Don't touch me, she shrieked, recoiling. You said you were rich. You said you were a partner. You're just a loser who got played by his wife. She ran past him, down the steps, slipping on the ice in her high heels, but scrambling up and running toward the street. She didn't look back. Derek O'Connell stood alone on his porch in his bathrobe, shivering violently. The Ferrari was gone. His girlfriend was gone. His job was gone. His house was gone. And somewhere, in a warm penthouse in Manhattan, Sarah Sinclair was just getting started. The Starlight Motel was the kind of place people went to disappear or to die. Located just off the interstate, squeezed between a 24-hour truck stop and a derelict salvage yard, it smelled of stale cigarette smoke, mildew, and despair. Derek O'Connell sat on the edge of the sagging mattress in room 104. He was wearing the same tuxedo trousers from the night before, now stained and wrinkled. His dress shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, and he was shivering, despite the rattling heater unit that blasted lukewarm air into the room. He had $20 in his pocket. His credit cards were plastic scraps. His bank accounts were black holes. His phone, which he had finally managed to charge using a cable borrowed from the motel clerk, was vibrating incessantly. He hesitated to look at it. The last time he checked, his inbox was full of legal threats. It's a mistake, he muttered to himself, rocking back and forth. It's all a big misunderstanding. Sarah will calm down. It's the pregnancy hormones. She's irrational. I just need to talk to her. He reached for the remote and turned on the small, boxy television bolted to the dresser. He flipped to the local news channel, hoping for a weather report. Instead, he saw his own face. It was a grainy video, clearly shot on a smartphone from a neighboring property. The angle was slightly high, likely filmed from a bedroom window of the estate next door. The headline at the bottom of the screen read, "The Grinch of Greenwich, pregnant wife, evicted in blizzard." Derek watched in horror. The video showed everything. It showed him pointing at the door. It showed Sarah stumbling out into the snow. It showed Jessica laughing in the doorway, holding a glass of wine. And then it showed the magnificent arrival of the Sinclair helicopter, the spotlight illuminating Derek's face, twisted in a rictus of drunken rage. The news anchor, a woman with a severe bob and a disapproving expression, shook her head. The video, which has already garnered over 5 million views on social media, identifies the man as Derek O'Connell, a junior partner at Sterling and Finch. The woman he evicted is Sarah Sinclair, the reclusive heiress to the Sinclair mining fortune. Sources say O'Connell was unaware of his wife's identity, believing her to be destitute when he cast her out on Christmas Eve to move in his Mistress. The screen cut to a "man on the street" segment. "He's a monster," said a woman in a Parker's. "Who does that? I hope he rots." "I used to invest with Sterling and Finch," said a man in a suit. "I pulled my money this morning. I don't do business with scumbags." Derek dropped the remote. The batteries popped out and rolled under the bed. "No!" Derek gasped. "No, no, no." He grabbed his phone. He opened Twitter. The hashtag #OrtsGreenwichGrinch was trending worldwide. There were memes. There were cartoons of him being eaten by the Sinclair eagle. Someone had doxed his email address, and he had 40,000 unread messages, most of them suggesting he take a long walk off a short pier. "I have to fix this," Derek said, standing up. "I have to spin the narrative." He washed his face in the cracked sink with a bar of gritty soap. He tried to smooth his hair. He put on his coat, the only coat he had left, and walked out of the motel. He had to get to the office. If he could just get to his desk, he could access his files, prove his worth, maybe call a press conference. He would tell them Sarah was mentally unstable. He would say he was trying to get her help. Yes, that was it. He was the victim here. He spent his last $20 on a cab to the financial district. When the taxi pulled up in front of the glass and steel skyscraper that housed Sterling and Finch, Derek felt a flicker of hope. This was his domain. This was where he was a king. He walked toward the revolving doors, his head held high, ignoring the disheveled state of his clothes. "Mr. O'Connell!" A wall of noise hit him. He turned to see a pack of photographers and reporters camping out by the fountain. They spotted him instantly. Flashbulbs erupted like fireworks. "Derek! Derek! Is it true you didn't know she was a billionaire? Did you really make her carry her own luggage? How does it feel to be the most hated man in America? Where is the mistress, Derek? Did she dump you too?" Derek pushed through them, shielding his eyes. "No comment. Get out of my way." He reached the security turnstiles in the lobby. He slapped his ID badge against the reader. Beep, beep. Red light. Access denied. He tried again. Beep, beep. "Hey!" Derek shouted at the security guard behind the desk. It was Frank, a man Derek had ignored for 5 years. "Frank, the machine is broken. Let me in." Frank looked up slowly. He didn't smile. He didn't rush to help. He simply pressed a button on his console. 2 large uniformed men emerged from the side office. "Derek O'Connell," one of them said. "You are trespassing." "Trespassing?" Derek laughed hysterically. "I work here. I'm a partner." "You were terminated for cause at 9 a.m., the guard said. "Gross misconduct and bringing the firm into disrepute. And pending the insider trading investigation, you are barred from the premises." "You can't do this," Derek screamed as they grabbed his arms. "Your personal effects have been boxed and are waiting at the service entrance," Frank said, finally speaking. He picked up a newspaper and went back to reading, ignoring Derek completely. The guards dragged Derek backward. The reporters outside saw the commotion and pressed their cameras against the glass. "Let go of me! Do you know who I am?" Derek shrieked, kicking his legs. "Yeah," the guard grunted, shoving him through the revolving door and onto the cold pavement. "You're the guy who messed with the Sinclairs. Good luck, pal. You're gonna need it." Derek stumbled, falling onto his hands and knees on the sidewalk. A cardboard box was tossed next to him. It landed upside down, spilling his world's best boss mug, which shattered, a stapler, and a framed photo of him and Jessica. The paparazzi swarmed. "Look at him! Get the shot of him on the ground!" Derek scrambled up, grabbing the stapler as a weapon. "Back off, all of you!" "Mr. O'Connell!" A reporter from a tabloid shoved a microphone in his face. "We just heard that Jessica Miller has signed an exclusive interview deal with Vanity Fair. She claims you coerced her, and that she was a victim of your manipulation. Do you have a response?" Derek froze. Jessica. She hadn't just left him. She was selling him out to save her own skin. She was going to paint him as the villain to salvage her reputation. The betrayal hit him harder than the cold. He looked around the circle of flashing lights and judging eyes. He saw his reflection in a window, wild-eyed, unshaven, dirty. He wasn't a king. He wasn't a shark. He was chum. He turned and ran. He ran down the block, leaving the box of his former life scattered on the sidewalk. He ran until his lungs burned and the flashing lights faded into the distance. But he couldn't outrun the truth. The world knew who he was now, and the world hated him. 3 weeks of living on the streets had turned Derek into a hollow shell. Desperate, freezing and starved, he staked out the lobby of the Sinclair Tower. When he finally spotted Sarah near the indoor gardens, looking radiant and untouchable in cream cashmere, he broke past the security line. "Sarah!" he screamed, collapsing to his knees before her. "Please, I was an idiot. I love you. Don't keep me from my child." Sarah looked down at him with zero sympathy. She didn't see a husband. She saw a parasite. "You don't want a child, Derek. You want a servant. You want your ATM back." "I've paid enough," he sobbed, reaching for the hem of her dress. "I'm sleeping in subways. I have nothing." "You haven't even started paying," she said coldly, kicking his hand away. "My lawyers were granted full sole custody yesterday. You have no rights. And as for your freedom, Jessica handed your hard drives to the SEC this morning. The warrant for insider trading just went live." Derek's face went pale. You framed me." "You were greedy enough to do it yourself," she replied, signaling security. "Get him out of my sight. He smells like regret." As guards dragged him across the polished marble, Sarah turned away, protecting her unborn daughter. But outside, as flashing police lights illuminated his tattered coat, Derek's despair twisted into a manic rage. He felt the secret USB drive sewn into his lining, stolen leverage he had found in the attic months ago. "I'm not done!" Derek shouted, as officers slammed him against the squad car. "I have evidence. I have a story that will burn the Sinclair empire to ash. I want a deal." Inside the cold interrogation room, Derek sat handcuffed but smiling. He thought he held the ace of spades. "I want a deal," Derek told Detective Miller. "In the lining of my coat is a flash drive. It contains the Blue Creek files, proof Sinclair Mining poisoned a town's water. I leak it and Sarah's stock crashes. Drop the charges or I destroy her legacy." Linda Wolfson, Sarah's lawyer, didn't flinch. She simply opened a laptop and plugged in the seized drive. "You mean these files, Derek?" Derek leaned forward, expecting to see damning reports. Instead, a single image filled the screen. A cartoon clown holding a sign that read, "Congratulations, you're a traitor." "It's a canary trap," Linda said coldly. "Sarah planted that drive in the attic 3 years ago to test your loyalty. The files are fake, Derek. But by stealing them and attempting blackmail, you've just confessed to corporate espionage and extortion." Derek's smile crumbled into horror. He hadn't found leverage. He had found his own prison sentence. 6 months later, a black limousine idled where the O'Connell mansion once stood. The house was gone, bulldozed on Sarah's orders. In its place was New Beginnings Park, a green space filled with laughing children. Sarah sat in the back of the car, holding her newborn daughter, Aurora. She glanced at her phone. Derek O'Connell, sentenced to 20 years. She felt no pity, only the lightness of a burden removed. "He never even asked her name," Sarah whispered, looking at the baby. "He didn't deserve to know it," Arthur replied from the driver's seat. "Let's go, Arthur," she said, turning away from the park. "We have an empire to run." The limo sped away, leaving the past buried under fresh soil. Sarah Sinclair had survived the winter, and now she was finally blooming. From a freezing driveway on Christmas Eve to the boardroom of a global empire, Sarah's journey proves that the best revenge isn't anger. It's absolute, undeniable success. Derek O'Connell thought he was discarding a burden, but he was actually throwing away a winning lottery ticket. He underestimated the quiet strength of the woman standing beside him, and by the time he realized his mistake, the helicopter had already taken off. In the end, the Grinch of Greenwich lost his house, his freedom, and his family, leaving behind nothing but a park where children play, a final, ironic legacy of a man who hated childish things. What did you think of Sarah's canary trap with the flash drive? Would you have been smart enough to test your partner's loyalty like that? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of karma and justice, please smash that like button, share this video with a friend who needs some drama, and don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a story.